I was the one who stayed late, cleaned up, remembered birthdays, forgave the yelling, and made excuses for everyone else's failures. I poured myself into keeping everything together, this house, this family, this job, while they tore me apart, piece by piece. He once looked at me right after I brought him dinner in the middle of his tantrum and muttered, "You were prettier when you didn't complain so much." That broke something in me. Not because it hurt, but because I didn't even react anymore. That's when I knew I wasn't living. I was sacrificing myself in installments for people who never planned to pay me back. So no more. You won't. Guilt me. You won't silence me. You won't get to drain me and call it love. Hi, I'm Rachel Quinn, and this is the story of how I stopped being everyone else's foundation and finally stood up for myself. He always said, "Don't wait up." And like a fool, I didn't. I thought staying late at the office was just part of marrying a successful man. I thought being understanding, being patient, being the cool wife who didn't nag or snoop was a virtue. Until I opened his laptop. It was supposed to be harmless. I needed to download a shared budget spreadsheet for the weekend. We were planning our family trip, our first in years. That same night, he kissed me goodbye on the forehead, saying he'd be home by 10. But when I opened the laptop, a message popped up. A notification from a name I didn't recognize, Lexi. I clicked it. "Last night was amazing. I can still feel your hands on me." My fingers went numb. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from disbelief. I scrolled. There were photos. Private ones. Dozens of them. Conversations with timestamps that matched the exact nights he had told me he was working late. That's when the truth hit me like a punch to the chest. He wasn't at the office. He was with her. And suddenly, everything made sense. The sudden gym membership, the late-night showers, the new cologne, the distant eyes at dinner, the distracted nods when I talk about our son's school, our mortgage, our life. I couldn't breathe. For 12 years, I had built a life around this man. I supported him when he had nothing. I edited his resume, stayed up proofreading proposals. I covered the bills when he was between jobs, picked up his mother from the hospital, nursed her when she fell sick, and all the while, I thought we were building something together. But he wasn't building a life with me. He was building an escape route. A carefully crafted lie, brick by brick, sealed with every false "I love you" and every distracted kiss. I sat there, shaking, hearing the clock tick like it was mocking me. I didn't cry. Not yet. Because the betrayal hadn't sunk in fully. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was old. Maybe. But then I clicked on a message from just that morning. "Can't stop thinking about last night. The way you moaned my name. You taste like sin." My name isn't Lexi. I closed the laptop. My hands were trembling, but my heart was frozen. I sat in the dark until I heard the garage door open at 10:23 p.m., just like he said. He walked in, loosened his tie, and kissed me on the cheek. He didn't even notice my silence. "How was your day?" he asked, grabbing a beer. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw someone I didn't recognize. A liar, a coward, a man who thought I'd never find out. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile. It was enlightening. He smiled back, clueless, and in that moment I made a silent promise. He would regret thinking I was naive. He would regret underestimating me. And most of all, he would regret ever giving his loyalty to someone who wasn't. His wife. Because I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to confront him just yet. No, I was going to do something much better. I was going to expose him. And when I did, he'd lose everything. The hardest part wasn't reading the messages. It was pretending I hadn't. Every morning, I'd hand him his coffee like nothing was wrong. Every evening, I'd listen to his fake stories about clients, deadlines, and working dinners, while he stared at his phone, probably messaging her right in front of me. I'd memorize his lies, cataloging them like evidence in a mental file. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was documenting. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was soft. He didn't know I was just waiting. But the longer I watched, the more I realized how deep it all went. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't some midlife crisis affair. This was a full-blown relationship. He had 2 lives, 2 different wardrobes, 2 voices, one for me, one for her. He told her she was his peace, his escape, the woman who understood him. Meanwhile, I was the one who packed his lunch, who made sure his suit was pressed, who stayed up with our son during fevers while he slept at the office. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was psychological. He had rewritten our entire marriage in his head, made himself the victim, made me the burden. I found out he had a separate credit card, one I didn't know about, a hidden account he used to take her to hotels, to buy her jewelry, to book weekend getaways, while telling me we needed to tighten the budget. He said we couldn't afford a new dishwasher while he bought her, a pair of designer shoes worth more than our car payment. I checked his location history. He never went to the office on Wednesdays. He'd park in a lot 2 blocks away from her condo, stay there for hours, and come back home smelling of peppermint body wash and betrayal. And then came the photo that broke me. It was her, wearing my necklace, the one my mother gave me before she passed. I had searched for it for months, thinking I'd lost it. He had given it to her, like it meant nothing. That's when something inside me flipped. The grief turned to rage. This wasn't just cheating. This was erasure. He was replacing me piece by piece, using my resources, my kindness, my labor, and handing them over to another woman, like I was just some disposable placeholder in his story. I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was being robbed of my identity. And then came the day he crossed the final line. He forgot our son's parent-teacher conference, again. When I reminded him, he said, "You can handle it, I've got a meeting." I knew he didn't. So I drove past her condo, and there he was, in sweats, carrying takeout, laughing as he walked up to her door. Our son had waited at school for an hour, asking where Daddy was. I told him Daddy had an emergency. And it was true. An emergency of character. That night, I looked in the mirror and asked myself a question I never thought I would. Who am I when love becomes a weapon? Because that's what he'd done. He'd weaponized my trust, my patience, my love, used it as a shield to hide behind while he built a second life. I wasn't just mourning the end of a marriage. I was standing in the wreckage of the woman I used to be. But if there's one thing betrayal teaches you, it's that silence can be strategic, and survival can look a lot like smiling through dinner. Because while he was busy underestimating me, I was building a plan to not just catch him, but to ruin the image of perfection he wrapped himself in. He wanted to pretend I'd give him a stage, and when the curtain dropped, every mask he wore would fall with it. I didn't just lose a husband. I lost time, identity, security, pieces of myself I had spent over a decade building around someone I thought was my forever. The betrayal bled into every corner of my life. I couldn't sleep without dreaming about the messages. I couldn't eat without thinking of the dinners he shared with her. Every touch, every smile he gave me now felt like a reenactment. A performance, a lie. But the worst part? Our son. He was only 8. Too young to understand words like infidelity or separation, but old enough to feel the cold tension growing in the house. He'd ask questions like, "Why doesn't Daddy tuck me in anymore?" Or, "Why is Daddy always texting?" And I'd smile through it, say something like, "He's just busy," while silently choking on the truth. He wasn't just hurting me, he was failing his own child. There were moments when I looked at my son and realized I had to act, not out of vengeance, but out of protection. If I allowed this to continue, if I allowed this man to keep living this double life unchecked, what was I teaching my son about love? About loyalty? About self-respect? I wasn't going to raise a boy who grew up thinking this was normal, that betrayal was acceptable, that women just tolerate pain to keep the family intact. No. He needed to see a mother who stood up, a mother who fought for truth, dignity, and self-worth, even when it hurt. But there were deeper, messier consequences too. Financially, we were entangled in every way. joint accounts, investments, real estate, retirement plans. And now I knew he was using our shared money, our future, to fund his second life. If I walked away quietly, he'd walk away with it all. If I exposed him too soon, he'd have time to cover his tracks. I couldn't afford impulsiveness. I needed precision. And then there was her. She wasn't just some naive girl caught in a man's lies. She knew about me. She laughed at the fact that he still wore his wedding ring. She messaged him while he was at our anniversary. Dinner said, "Tell her you're going to the bathroom and call me instead." I saw the message while we were toasting to 12 years of forever. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about betrayal. This was about disrespect. Calculated, gleeful, malicious disrespect. And I couldn't let that slide. Because women like her, they survive off the silence of wives like me. They feed off the secrecy, the stolen moments, the thrill of being chosen behind closed doors. But I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. If he wanted to act like a bachelor, he was about to face the real-world consequences of reckless selfishness. I wasn't going to confront him in private. He didn't deserve quiet conversations and second chances. He deserved exposure. He deserved the humiliation he so casually handed to me in secret. But I also had to be smart. A messy explosion would just give him pity points. I needed something cleaner, sharper, something that would cut. That's when I realized he was due for a promotion. His company was planning a celebration, a CEO Rising Star Award ceremony. His boss's wife was on the committee. His boss, who prided himself on family values, often said things like, "We only promote men with strong homes." And I knew he'd be there, with both masks on. One for me, and the other, well, she'd be watching from the sidelines like she always did. But not for long. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman who'd ever been betrayed and told to stay quiet. It was about my son, who deserved a better example. And it was about justice. So I started planning. I didn't want to ruin his life. I wanted him to ruin it himself, with his own words, his own lies, and in front of the people he so desperately wanted to impress. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't screaming. It's watching someone drown in the very ocean they swore you couldn't swim through. The plan wasn't born out of rage. It came from clarity. I had cried all I could. I had replayed the messages in my head until the words didn't even sting anymore. Now, it was about power, strategy, patience. He had no idea I knew. That was my biggest weapon, his arrogance. He believed he was invincible. He thought I was oblivious, and that made him careless. So I decided to give him the performance he wanted, the doting wife, the supportive mother, the perfect hostess for the promotion party his firm was hosting in 2 weeks. He told me about it one evening, sliding his plate forward like a king expecting to be served. "It's going to be a big night. The partners will be there. I'll need you to look elegant." I smiled and nodded, already picturing the fall. "Oh, I'll make sure it's unforgettable." The very next morning, I called my lawyer. I wasn't ready to file yet, not until I had everything. But I needed advice, documentation, strategy. She was fierce, thorough, and just as disgusted by the details as I was. "He's sloppy," she told me. "That's your advantage. Use it." So I did. First, I created a backup of every single message I found. Emails, texts, call logs, even the photos he tried to delete. I stored them all on a password-protected drive and made multiple copies. One with my sister, one with my lawyer, and one in a hidden folder on my personal cloud. I wasn't going to let this slip through the cracks. Next, I started tracking our finances, every transaction, every secret account. I found receipts for a spa getaway booked for 2, jewelry from a high-end boutique, a subscription to a hotel booking service under a fake name, all paid for with our joint funds. I kept collecting, quietly, methodically. It wasn't about confronting him, it was about cornering him. Then I turned my attention to her, Lexi. She was younger, yes, pretty maybe, in that filtered, curated Instagram way. But she wasn't smarter. I created a fake profile. Just enough to look real. No selfies, no flashy captions, just an account that could have belonged to any woman in his network. And within 3 days of following him, she followed me. Her profile was private, but she couldn't resist posting cryptic captions. I took screenshots of everything. Can't wait for our weekend, my love. Counting the minutes. He says he's almost free. Just a little longer. Almost free? He was married, with a child, and she knew it. That gave me everything I needed. But the final piece came when I offered to help him prep for his speech at the upcoming office event. I played the role to perfection, sat with him on the couch, laptop in hand, pretending to edit his PowerPoint while he made jokes about finally being appreciated. I told him, "You've worked so hard, you deserve the spotlight." He grinned. "Exactly, this night will change everything." He had no idea. I embedded something into that PowerPoint, a single slide. Set to appear after his speech when he clicked End Presentation. The file was disguised to look like a corporate logo transition. But when it played, it would show every message, every photo, every timestamp. A slow scroll of truth, complete with names, dates, and screenshots. I wouldn't have to say a word. His betrayal would speak for itself, and just in case he tried to stop it, I made sure it was backed up on a USB, given to a trusted friend who'd be at the event. I even included a note. If he tries to cut the mic, play this. I wasn't seeking public embarrassment just for drama. I wanted him to feel what I felt, cornered, exposed, and powerless. But more importantly, I wanted to sever the image he had spent years building. The charming husband, the rising executive, the loyal family man. All of it was a lie, and lies rot fastest in sunlight. In 2 weeks, his whole world would flip. I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't cause a scene. I'd just let truth do what it always does, burn down everything. Built on lies. And when the ashes settled, I'd be standing tall, not because I destroyed him, but because I survived him. The week before the event was a masterclass in self-control. Every morning, I kissed him goodbye with a smile I'd rehearsed in the mirror. Every night, I played the loving wife, setting the table, asking about his day, folding his laundry while he scrolled through messages from her. He had no clue he was walking into a trap of his own making. But behind the scenes, I was sharpening the knife. I gathered more documentation with every move he made, screenshots, receipts, credit card statements. My lawyer helped me draft a quiet financial freeze request, so he couldn't drain our joint accounts once the dust settled. The house? It was under my name. He didn't even know that. I refinanced it 2 years ago when his credit was tanking. He never read the papers I asked him to sign. Too busy with deals. I was done being silent. Done being stupid. The weekend. Before the big event, I booked an appointment with a stylist, not for vanity, but for strategy. I needed to walk into that party looking untouchable, powerful. I bought a dress in the deepest shade of crimson, bold, striking, dangerous. And heels that made my posture scream, "Don't mess with me." I didn't want to look like the woman who got cheated on. I wanted to look like the woman who saw everything and said nothing. Yet. The night before the event, I tested everything. I opened the presentation on my own laptop and clicked through until the final slide, the one I'd buried beneath layers of bland corporate talk. And then, like a ghost in the machine, the truth came alive. Screenshot 1, her selfie in his hotel room mirror. Screenshot 2, I miss your hands on me. Time stamped 3 minutes after our anniversary dinner started. Screenshot 3, she'll never find out. She's too soft. I paused the slide, stared at that line. Too soft? I thought about the nights I stayed up with his sick mother. The weeks I worked overtime to support us when he got fired. The years I covered for his absences, his coldness, his disappearances. He didn't think I was soft. He thought I was blind. I closed the laptop, picked up the USB drive, labeled it in black ink, Truth. Then I went to bed beside him for the last time. He snored while I stared at the ceiling, already hearing the gasps of the crowd, already seeing his jaw drop. already watching Lexi storm out of the room. Because here's the thing about men like him, they're addicted to performance. But when the lights turn on and the script runs out, they panic. And I had the lights, the script, and the crowd. The day of the event arrived. He was nervous, in a good way. His suit freshly pressed, hair slicked back, ego inflated beyond repair. I helped him tie his tie. He kissed my hand. "Thanks for sticking by me all these years," he said. "Oh," I stuck. We arrived to a ballroom filled with the people who mattered. To him most, executives, board members, clients, mentors, even his parents were there. The room buzzed with polished small talk and champagne. Then it was showtime. He took the stage with his usual smug charm. Made jokes, thanked me for being his rock, talked about loyalty and trust like they were tools he'd invented. I waited in the front row, smiling, clapping, every pair of eyes on him. Then he clicked next slide. And the room went still. There it was. A full-screen message. "Let me show you what loyalty really looks like." And the scroll began. Messages, photos, dates, receipts, her face, his words. The truth. Gasps echoed through the crowd like thunder. Someone dropped a glass. His boss's wife covered her mouth. His father stood frozen. He fumbled for the remote, tried to click out. Too late. It was looping, set to auto-replay. I stood, up, walked slowly to the front of the room, looked him in the eye, and said, clear and calm, "You told her I was too soft. I just wanted her to see how sharp I could be." Then I handed him the divorce papers, signed, notarized, airtight. The silence that followed was the loudest moment of my life. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. He didn't say a word. He couldn't. His lips moved, but nothing came out. Just a breath, a flicker of disbelief, and then a look I'll never forget. Not regret. Panic. Because for once the consequences caught up with him in real time. No secret cover-ups. No half-baked lies. No easy exit. Just the truth, projected 10 feet tall in front of everyone who once thought he was honorable. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply turned, heels echoing across the ballroom floor, and walked out. Behind me, the chaos unfolded like a final act. Lexi stormed toward the exit, face flushed, demanding he fix this. His boss followed closely behind, looking like someone who had just watched his prized employee unravel. And the guests, they whispered, gasped, stared. The image he'd worked so hard to cultivate had collapsed. Not with a scandal, but with proof, cold, hard proof. That's the thing about liars. Once you expose them, they have nothing left to stand on. And once you stop protecting them, they crumble fast. Outside the ballroom, the night air felt like freedom. I had parked on the far end of the lot, where the streetlights didn't quite reach. It gave me a moment to breathe, to cry, just a little, but not from grief, from relief. Because I wasn't mourning a man who loved me. I was burying the illusion of one who never did. The next morning, the video went viral within their corporate circle. Someone had filmed it, the texts, the photos, my final line. It was shared in group chats, whispered about in meetings, and spread like wildfire across company Slack channels. His promotion? Cancelled. His position? Suspended, pending further review. His reputation? Torched. Lexi disappeared off social media the same day. Deleted every account, blocked everyone tied to him. She wasn't built for public disgrace. He never told her he had so much to lose. As for me, I moved in with my sister temporarily while my lawyer finalized the split. I kept the house, the savings. The custody agreement gave me primary care of our son, with supervised visits until further notice. I told my son the truth, but gently. That sometimes people make promises they don't keep. That grown-ups mess up too. But most, importantly, that his mother will always fight to protect what's right. He nodded, wise beyond his years, and hugged me tightly. "You're really strong, Mom." And for the first time, I believed it. In the months that followed, I started over. I took a new job, Nothing flashy, but something mine. I painted the kitchen, got rid of our old bed, burned the love letters I once thought were sacred. I went back to therapy, took walks without checking my phone, slept on both sides of the bed because now I could. People say revenge is bitter. They're wrong. Revenge is clarity. Revenge is standing in front of the wreckage someone else made and realizing you survived it. That you didn't break. That you bent, but you came back stronger, sharper. He told me once that I was too quiet, too easy to ignore, but he knows better now. Now, when people ask him what happened, why his career stalled, why his wife left, why no one looks at him the same way, he can either lie again or he can admit the truth. That he bet on someone he thought would stay silent and lost everything when she finally spoke. I didn't just expose him. I freed myself. And no matter how many years I gave him, he'll spend the rest of his life remembering one night, the night I let truth speak louder than my pain, the night I stopped protecting a man who never protected me, and the night he realized, you don't play with a woman who knows her worth.